The US central bank will probably have to start printing money soon. We have confirmation from Reuters. We have confirmation from the Fed president. And that's exactly what we've been waiting for. Also, the markets are starting to recover a bit. There's a bit of relief coming into the market now. Yesterday I said that maybe we've hit the bottom here. Those weren't my statements. But there are various analysts who now see the bottom here. We also have some interesting comments from Elon Musk, who's talking about an energy-backed currency. Does he possibly mean Bitcoin here? We need to take a closer look at that. And a 90 Pompliano with a very, very interesting market assessment. Guys, let's dive into all of this now. Above all, the US central bank is absolutely crucial for liquidity. And what's happening here is really, really intense. Before we get started, smash the like button below for higher Bitcoin prices or new all-time highs. And as a little thank you for your support, I'll also show you the bullish surfers here. Yeah, now she really nailed it. And here we have Andre Dragos, who says it as well. It looks like renewed quantitative easing will be the final catalyst Bitcoin has been waiting for to experience a sharp surge here. And then, just a few seconds later, this news comes out. Or actually, the other way around. Fed President Williams expects central banks to return to asset purchases soon. And asset purchases simply mean that government bonds are being bought back from the market again. The ones that nobody is buying on the open market. That's nothing other than QE, quantitative easing. I already reported on this yesterday, when Ray Dalio talked about it. Ray Dalio says QE is about to start now. The central bank will stop QE in December. Usually, it always needs a short transition period before QE actually begins. But now, even the president of the New York Fed himself is talking about QE here. It could start at any time. And of course, that's an ultra bullish signal. Just as a reminder, in the past, these QE phases have always been the ultimate catalyst for Bitcoin. That was the time when Bitcoin really exploded upwards. We can also see here that demand for Bitcoin is still very, very low. Yeah, it's not at an all-time low, but it's still very, very low. And of course, that could change again if the price starts to rise. The price always sets the narrative here. When the price is weak, the entire Bitcoin market really struggles as well. There's also a very, very important quote here from the president of the New York Fed. It says here, based on recent sustained repo market pressure, so we still have pressure in the repo market, meaning short-term interbank business is under strain, and other growing signs of reserves moving from abundant to ample. So this means that liquidity is simply running a bit low. I expect that it will not be long before we reach ample reserves. So he's talking here about the trigger points when liquidity could be injected back into the market. And that's exactly what a lot of people have been expecting for quite some time. When liquidity simply dries up here, the Fed has to step in various ways. First, to create demand for government bonds in the bond market. And second, of course, to push interbank business forward a bit so that liquidity doesn't dry up if banks stop trusting each other. We also just had some very interesting market insights from Anthony Pompliano before we move on to Elon Musk.
A couple of weeks ago, NASDAQ was running and Bitcoin was going sideways, right? And so I think that what people are really trying to figure out is it correlated? Is it non-correlated? Is it inversely correlated? And part of it is that Bitcoin is still in this transition period. You know, my friend Jordy Visser's got this great way of framing it. He says Bitcoin is having its IPO moment. And the whole idea is that you have the early holders of Bitcoin who are dispersing that Bitcoin into the market. And there has been billions and billions of dollars of sales of Bitcoin coming from those early holders, yet the Bitcoin price is still at $100,000. And so there is this persistent bid coming from the traditional financial system saying, we want to buy the Bitcoin and we're happy to take it out of the hands of those early holders.
And this is now very, very important, especially for people who are currently bearish, who are selling their Bitcoin, because this is what I've said many times before. If you sell your Bitcoin at this moment, the institutions will, of course, be more than happy to take those Bitcoins off your hands. We've seen the big shift from long-term holders, from OGs, who are now simply moving their Bitcoin into institutions' hands. He's talking about the IPO moment, which I've also talked about here several times. He quotes Jordy Visser again here, saying that Bitcoin now simply has the necessary liquidity. And into this liquidity, enough Bitcoin can be dumped by OGs who, back in the day, accumulated 20, 30, 40, 50,000 or even more Bitcoin. These are the ones now taking profits at the $100,000 mark. And then he goes on to ask, okay, do we now have a correlation with the NASDAQ? Sometimes we see a correlation. Sometimes we see less of a correlation. Overall, of course, we still have the traditional financial markets. Bitcoin has also been influenced by exactly that, liquidity. Bitcoin is, I would say, already very dependent on liquidity. And that's also what many people are saying. Okay, this weakness in market liquidity is what caused Bitcoin to correct again here. So definitely some very interesting insights here from Anthony Pompliano. And now we actually have Elon Musk here as well. I think this was even at the shareholder meeting or something like that for Tesla. It must have been at some Tesla event. Here, he's talking about something that is directly related to Bitcoin. Or in other words, he's basically describing Bitcoin without actually using the word Bitcoin.
There's not like an obvious limit. like Optimus is kind of like an infinite money glitch. And maybe there won't even be money in the future. Or money might be measured in terms of wattage, like how much power can you bring to bear from an electrical standpoint. So I guess what I'm saying is hang on to your Tesla stock.
And I found this to be a very, very interesting statement. So he's saying here that maybe there won't even be money at all in the future. That's also, for example, something I've hinted at from time to time. If, of course, humans were at a very, very high state of consciousness, which, as a collective, we're still very far from, then it would potentially be possible for us to interact without needing any kind of intermediary or anything like that. But for that, of course, we also have to realize that we're all one, that we're all a big part of creation, and not go around bashing each other's heads in. It's our egos that make us believe otherwise. And he says it could be that in the future we won't have any money at all. But if we do have money, then it will be money that's somehow connected to energy. Money that we can measure in energy, in voltage, as he says here, voltage power. And what's interesting is, that's basically exactly what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin also has a hash rate, and from the hash rate, we can roughly gauge the network security. It's not like Bitcoin is backed one-to-one by energy. That's actually a big mistake a lot of people make, for example. Because if Bitcoin were backed one-to-one by energy, then theoretically we could also extract that energy back out of the Bitcoin network, kind of like with a gold standard, where you can always exchange the currency back for gold or for paper money, or something like that. But Bitcoin is secured by energy. That means we have all these mining computers, or mining, I'm not sure what to call it, mining computing power, machines that simply secure the Bitcoin network. And that gives a lot of people a certain sense of security, because Bitcoin can't just be created out of thin air. To bring new Bitcoin into circulation, you have to provide computing power. You have to put in energy. And that's exactly what Elon Musk is saying here as well. And other people have talked about this too, that we actually need a form of money that's tied to energy, that has something to do with energy in some way. In the case of Bitcoin, it's the proof of work algorithm, which in my opinion is absolutely brilliant, because we can't just randomly copy things in the digital world. We can only create new Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is something digital in that sense. We can only create it if we also provide computing power in the real world. That means we've connected the digital world with the physical world. We've secured everything through energy. And you could even say we have a kind of energy measurement, just like Elon Musk says, because we can simply see how the hash rate keeps going up. And based on the increase in hash rate, we can also determine whether there are still venture capitalists in the market. The venture capitalists, those are the Bitcoin miners. That's what, for example, Max Kaiser always says. You should look at how the hash rate is developing. If the hash rate is developing positively, then you don't need to worry about the Bitcoin price. The Bitcoin price fluctuates. The hash rate has kept going up recently, over the past few years. And that's very, very crucial. If you really wanted to go into detail, you'd even say, okay, it's not just the hash rate that's important, but also the cost of that energy. Because if, let's say, energy were available worldwide at almost zero cost, then the hash rate would obviously be much less meaningful. Whereas if that energy is much more expensive, it's a different story. Because, in reality, the security of the Bitcoin network is determined when we compare the energy, that is, the hash rate, to the cost of that hash rate. And that's actually the security layer. Because, as I said, if someone had the ultimate energy machine and basically had energy at zero cost, and could make it available, which probably will happen somehow, then, of course, we could exploit the entire network. But since that's not the case, since energy always has certain costs, and we can't get it down to zero, we simply have a certain level of security here, and miners just always go where electricity is cheapest. And what Elon Musk also says, which is kind of like an infinite money glitch if you just stay positive, that's also what I always want to pass on to you, especially when it comes to naysayers and critics and so on. Of course, that's all well and good, but those critics aren't going to invest large amounts in Bitcoin anyway. They're always pretty good at writing some books and coming up with all sorts of weird arguments about why Bitcoin has to fail and why it just won't work out. And it always sounds intellectually appealing, and people like that often get a lot of engagement. But those kinds of people are often not actually the wealthiest. Usually, they're the ones struggling with their own finances. Because you also need a bit of a certain positive outlook on the world. If you just go through life with a negative attitude, of course that negativity will come right back to you. And then you shouldn't be surprised if there's no money in your portfolio either. And above all, negative people have a big problem. They lack courage. And that's exactly what Michael Saylor says, for example. The problem isn't that people lack knowledge. There are plenty of smart people. But what they're missing is conviction, the courage. You really have to make a decision and say, okay, hey, I've discovered Bitcoin now. This is a huge opportunity. I'm selling my house now and going all in on Bitcoin. Or I start a savings plan bit by bit and invest in Bitcoin. I gradually build up capital and shift that capital into Bitcoin. That means courage is much, much more important than knowledge. But in the end, we have to bring everything together. Conviction, courage, and knowledge. Because if we only have courage but no knowledge, it'll probably come back to bite us at some point, since we'll just end up panic selling. That means we need the courage. We have to get into Bitcoin, but then we also have to study Bitcoin. We have to really engage with it. Then we become hard hodlers. And a 30% drop, a 50% drop, even a 60% drop won't faze us anymore. Then we understand the cycles of Bitcoin. We understand Bitcoin's volatility. We understand the long-term potential of Bitcoin. And then we're very, very resilient in this network. And then we laugh when the Bitcoin price goes down, while other people are crying and panicking. We know exactly that every time Bitcoin goes down, it's another great opportunity to buy more. I'm definitely very, very curious to see what happens. What I found especially interesting was the statement that Elon Musk thinks there might not even be money at all in the future. But as I said, we're probably still very, very far from that level of awareness. In that sense, even Bitcoin would just be a transitional phase. But as long as we're not all at that level of collective consciousness yet, Bitcoin is probably still our best shot at fairness. Decentralized money that will also bring more harmony into the world. Now there's a helicopter flying by right here. And guys, yeah, let me know in the comments below how you see things. And if you still want to buy Bitcoin, check out 21 Bitcoin. It's an absolute recommendation. Here you can set up savings plans. Here you can make one-time transfers, so one-time purchases. You can place limit orders. Tons and tons of features, even auto wallet transfer. An absolute recommendation. I'll drop a link for you down below. And if you're still looking for a way to store your Bitcoin optimally here, to secure them, then I also recommend you get a hardware wallet. I recommend the TREZOR hardware wallet. There's even the new quantum-ready TREZOR 7 hardware wallet, which is also highly recommended. I'll put that down below for you as well. With the code BitcoinHotel, you'll get a discount. I'll include that link below too. See you guys, peace out.